From a young age, I've always been very interested in how language shapes us. I think part of it stems from the fact that grew up around a lot of people from different cultures that spoke different languages. And I've always been very observant. And so, observing the interactions between people of different languages, plus my interest in reading, made me more and more and more aware of language. And I think personally, I hate being misunderstood or misrepresented. And so, one of the ways that I focused on, I guess, mitigating that is improving my language. Obviously, when I was a kid, this was not a conscious decision by virtue of reading. I think I just learned a lot of new words. But as I grew up, I started to use a lot of the words I learned, which sounds very obvious, but in reality, a couple things are true. One is, even when you learn a new word, a lot of times people will not speak with a different vocabulary than the people around them because it makes you feel different. The other thing is, a lot of times when we learn new words or we come across new words, we don't bother to look them up. We kind of just infer, and maybe our inference is wrong, but regardless, we don't ever really think about it again. So while the idea of learning new vocabulary and employing it sounds obvious, a lot of us actually don't act in that way. And I think what ends up happening is we misrepresent ourselves so very often that we start to lose touch with who we are and start to feel a disconnect between who we are and how people perceive us. But in a lot of ways, how people perceive us is also based on what we say and how we articulate ourselves. And oftentimes, we find ourselves lacking the diversity in our vocabulary to express ourselves. And dude, it's not about sounding smart. It's about feeling that what you're saying is an accurate representation of what you mean. If there wasn't a use for different words, they simply would not exist. We don't have multiple words for a similar thing just for redundancy's sake. We have different words because they elicit a different reaction and they have a different meaning. And so it's very interesting to me because this is a great tool in representing yourself well. However, so many of us don't utilize this tool that is literally free of charge and right there for you to use. Based on observation, I've noticed that there are core words, or there tend to be core words, that have more of a broad definition. For example, happy, sad, mad, tired, good, bad. These are all very broad, basic terms that a lot of us use on a daily basis. However, there are different delineations of these words that can completely shift the tone and intent of your statement. Sometimes the delineations give texture to a word, sometimes they change the intent of the word. There are very many different variations of this, but nonetheless, they all have a purpose. So, for example, you could say somebody did a really good thing for you. Oh my God, this person did a really good thing. Thank you so much. It was very nice of you. Okay, very basic. But maybe say the thing that you enjoyed that they did was specifically that they did something thoughtful. Then you could say, hey, it was a very kind thing you did and it was very thoughtful. Or it was a very thoughtful thing that they did. Another example is, say maybe instead in this point, what they did you find admirable. It's a quality that you admire in them, the good thing that they did. Okay, if that's the case, you can say admirable instead of just good. Now see, this is when describing other things, but say you're describing your own emotions or yourself or your own perspective, you could say on a basic level, I'm angry about something. But that's so broad and doesn't really point to what it is that is actually upsetting you, right? Instead of saying angry as a broad spectrum word, you could say, for example, I am irritated, I am frustrated, I am enraged, I am fuming. See, like how all of these words have a different intent to them? If, for example, you're upset or angry about something and you say, I'm irritated, it shows that the core of your frustration isn't in fact rage, but just irritation, versus saying, I'm enraged, means something really affected you deeply. Or saying I'm fuming gives a different perspective or interpretation to the person you're talking to versus saying I'm frustrated. Do you see what I mean? Like, word choice really does change how your message is received and how well you can express yourself and how accurately you can express yourself. Because, see, in this example that I just gave you, if you just say that you're angry, say you're fighting with a friend or a partner and you just say that you're angry, okay, what good does it do you? Maybe they get defensive and they think that you're in fact enraged, and so they immediately fight back or something of that regard, right? Versus if you're fighting with someone you care about and you say, hey, I'm just really frustrated or I'm really irritated, the tone and intent of that statement will be experienced by them in an entirely different manner than saying I'm angry or I'm fuming. Do you get what I mean? It is, if anything, your most effective tool in this life. Honestly, because even if you read, I've been really into history recently. If you look into the history books, I mean, most wars were not won with steel or shows of strength, physical strength. Most wars were won by cunning, by your words. I think this is talked about a lot. I haven't read this book in a long time, but there's a book called The 48 Laws of Power. I'm sure you've all heard of it. They talk about this in many various forms in that book. It's a little bit of an extreme book for me, but regardless, it's even mentioned in that book. This idea that your greatest weapon is your words and your greatest tool is your words. You know, like the crux of diplomacy is how you present your point. This sentiment can be applied to all areas of your life, not just if you're pursuing that path. I mean, when I started to pick my words more specifically, it helped me communicate myself much better. And there is a way to do this because here's the fear, right? That you start talking like this and people are going to see you as weird, or people are not even going to understand the words that you're saying. But I think the mistake I made is that I didn't say anything because I was also afraid that if they didn't have the vocabulary, they would be mad at me because I'd had moments in my life where speaking the way I spoke made people think I think I'm better than them, which in reality is not the case. I just had books for friends most of my life. So I guess learned how to talk almost from books in a way, which just uses more diverse language. You get what I mean? Anyhow, I've had moments in my life where I've had friends fight with me and call me condescending because of the way I speak. And you know what? Maybe there were times that I was condescending. I don't remember everything clearly enough, but I'm sure there were moments where I was condescending because I was also young and insecure. However, as I grew older, I realized that the right people in your life will not be intimidated. Like for me, whenever I hear a new word or someone can teach me something new, I'm very interested. Like I want to learn. So that fear should not hold you back. The other thing is if people think you're weird for speaking in a certain way, screw them. Like what? You're going to dumb yourself down just because people think it's weird that you speak with a complicated or more complex and diverse vocabulary? That's some cuckoo shit, to be honest. Like that's unnecessary. Because you know what? Yeah, my friends tease me all the time for the kind of words that I use. And I make fun of myself all the time because it is funny sometimes the type of words I use in normal situations that come to mind. However, it's always all lighthearted and fun. Like they never give me actual crap for talking that way. And it wouldn't make sense for them to do so, right? Actually, most of my friends will ask me what the word means and then I'll explain it and there's no issue. Like there's a way to do that that's so not condescending. I think that people are going to judge you either way. So you might as well do what you want and actually articulate yourself well. It will save you a lot of headache, both internally and externally. Now, I know for someone who maybe hasn't had the opportunity in life to read as much, because, you know, some people have to start working, supporting their family really young. There are so many different circumstances in which the luxury of reading is not afforded to a lot of people. or even the luxury of a strong education, which shouldn't be a luxury, it should be a necessity. Anyhow, point being that there is nothing wrong with a person that doesn't have that vocabulary now. I'm sure there are so many sets of circumstances that make it very difficult to focus on something like this. However, if you are able to take some time now in your life to start building and growing your vocabulary, it will do nothing but serve you in your future. And I know it can seem overwhelming because if you start from a small starting point, everything can seem so very overwhelming. But in reality, it's not a race, there's not a curriculum. You just learn as you go, kind of how life is. Even though life does seem overwhelming, at the end of the day, you still have to go through life. You just take it day by day and learn. Same thing with learning words. Take it day by day. I know some people who use like a word a day app, some people who follow like word of the day pages. Personally, like I said, I read. I do audiobooks or physical books, or I'll actually watch podcasts, like more academic podcasts. And look, I don't like doing things outside of a routine. I don't like when things take too much extra time. So I try to build things into my routine. So when I read, for example, physically, I just tap the word on my ebook. Usually it's an ebook, so I'll tap on it and I'll save that definition. For me, my system is a little different because I've been reading for so long. I kind of just remember words as I go. But I do know that people have systems, for example, they'll just put words into like their notes app and put down the definition, or they'll have like a little list. Do whatever it is. Some people, I think, put a sticky note at the beginning of their book and just add every word they don't know, and then they search them as they go. That's something else that you could do. What else could you do? Read poetry. You don't have to. I know some people really don't like poetry, but poetry has some very interesting descriptive language in there. Read articles. Articles are also thought out and they tend to try to use a diverse set of words in their writing. So that can also help you. I guess there is an academic way of going about things. And if that's what you're looking for, I don't have the energy to explain something academic, nor do I have the qualifications to explain something in such a formal setting. But I think in the intuitive nature of living life, right? As you're living life, you don't have to make this a whole class in your life. Just make it a conscious note to recognize new words and make the effort to learn them. Because as my vocabulary expands, and it's ever expanding, it's not that you can get to a point where you're like, I have all the words I need. No, it's ever expanding. And as my vocabulary grows, I'm able to so much better articulate myself in a way that I don't have regrets over. Because as an overthinker, as someone who unfortunately lives with really bad anxiety, which I don't think I've ever recognized in my life until my later years, but I got anxiety. And so I will overthink and overthink and overthink all sorts of scenarios in which I expressed myself and felt that I didn't express myself well. And it's not to say that if you grow your vocabulary, you'll always express yourself in the best way. There are so many things that come into play: emotion, circumstance, environment. Yeah, at least I have the tools should I want to use them. And when I do use them, it really helps mitigate that intense overwhelm that I feel after a sensitive conversation. Or actually, it doesn't even have to be a sensitive conversation. It could be any conversation. It just depends on my mood. But if I'm feeling overly anxious and I'm overanalyzing something, when I know that I've picked my words well, it helps tampen down that feeling because there is less room for interpretation in what you say when you use the right words that more precisely illustrate your meaning. Do you see what I mean? Like, is this making sense? Because I think if you really really think about what I'm saying, like genuinely sit and think about what I'm saying, something will click. Like it will make sense to you. Because most of the important things in life that we must learn are right in front of our face. They're so obvious, we just tend to think life is so complex, and the answer to living a good life must be so complex and wrought with turmoil and sacrifice and blah and blah and blah, when in reality some of the best and most effective tools we have at our disposal are things that we've always had inherently within us and that we can hone and refine to use better. I've made business deals based on my word choice, literally amazing business deals, huge deals that I almost could swear it came down to the way I presented the point. I mean, sales is all about this, right? There's many aspects to it, but a big part is actually physically what you say. Now we can get into the broader scope of it, of like your tone and your inflection and how that all makes a difference, because naturally I speak with a lot of variation in my tone and my inflection. I don't know if it shows up as much on this podcast because I feel I'm more reserved still. I'm still getting more, I guess, comfortable. But around the people that I'm very comfortable with, they see that a lot. And that makes a very big difference too in how your point is communicated and received. However, if I go into that, we're going to be here all day. So let us focus on the main point, which is expanding your vocabulary. I'm going to explain to you your life right now. Say you're fighting with a loved one, okay? Decide whoever that loved one is. And you're trying to talk about how you feel, but you feel you don't have the words to express how you feel, and everything that you say is coming out wrong, and they're taking it so different than you mean it, but you can't find yourself out of that cycle. No matter what you say, it seems like you can't quite articulate all the words that you're feeling. And so you don't feel that you fully get anything out or that you're accurately communicating with that loved one. Now, after this, you start to feel misunderstood. You start to feel shame. You start to feel like you're not smart enough, or maybe you're not worthy enough, or good enough, or capable enough. You start to turn the anger inward most often, or you start to project the anger on them. They're just dumb. They just don't understand. They just don't get it. And maybe over time, you start to feel you are being perceived as someone you're not because you don't have the right vocabulary to position yourself in a way that actually aligns with who you are. Now, over time, these feelings of being misunderstood or intellectually underestimated go from feelings to truths that you accept, although that is not what is the reality. You felt this way, and now you accept this to be a fact about yourself, and it chips away at your confidence, and you start to shrink yourself and you shrink your voice because you feel like what you say is not powerful and does not matter and does not represent you. So you, in fact, silence yourself. And over time, that silence is eroding at your identity. And that feeling of being unable to express your inner world and your inner circumstance starts to make you feel very unstable within yourself and makes you much more vulnerable to accepting what other people tell you you should feel or that you are feeling instead of standing strong with your own feelings. And so now you're a shell of who you were. You don't even know where to start. And all of this because you don't have the vocabulary to align yourself well and to align your words well with who you actually are. So many of our big problems in life come from simple issues that snowball to have a massive effect on our life. This is one of them. And then somewhere in that snowball, we forget even what the original issue was, and now we're lost. I mean, the snowball effect was illustrated very well in House of the Dragon. I just finished watching that show, and there's a scene in which they're talking about the war and talking about what was the start of the war. And then one of the people says, honestly, it doesn't even matter at this point. Soon we'll be lost to the rage of war and we will forget why it even begun, and no one will ever stop. And this same idea is what happens in our life. So many of our complex issues can be whittled down to a very simple core issue. Yet we spend so much of our lives fighting these issues and building them up to be this big complex thing that we couldn't possibly get over, that we lose sight of our capabilities and of the core issue at hand. We oftentimes find ourselves putting bandages on the symptoms of an issue without ever addressing the core issue. And then we complain about being plagued with never-ending issues. Yet the reality is, you never solved your previous issues. You just put band-aids over the wounds. And now the core cause of all the suffering is rearing its head up again and again and again and again. So anyways, if we circle back, my point being that in growing your vocabulary, you can change your life in so many levels that I think if I talk about them all in detail, we'll be here forever. But I'll talk about three main aspects. Okay, one, internally. When you start being able to communicate and expand your vocabulary, you're also able to communicate with yourself internally in a much more effective manner because you have the vocabulary to better identify situations, circumstances, experiences, and feelings. So you can communicate with yourself in a healthier and better perspective. On the second level, it's how you communicate yourself to the world and how that agrees with you. When you expand your vocabulary and you start communicating with the world and you feel that what you're communicating aligns with how you see yourself and how you've portrayed yourself aligns with who you are, you begin to feel more at ease with being perceived because you feel that being perceived is not a danger, as you are not as in trouble or as at risk of being misunderstood because you are taking back your autonomy and power by improving your vocabulary so that you can better articulate yourself. Now, the third level is actually how people perceive you. Now, when you feel at ease with yourself and you feel that you're communicating in a way that is more aligned with who you are then able to improve your relationships with other people. You're able to improve your communication with other people and decrease friction with other people because there's always a chance to be misunderstood, but there's a significantly reduced chance to be misunderstood when you're able to express yourself with the right vocabulary. Because then there's not really a misunderstanding. But again, when you use very broad terms, you leave a lot of things open to interpretation. When you use more specific and nuanced language, you leave less to interpretation and you leave the recipient guided to exactly what you're trying to express versus allowing them to make that interpretation for you. And so these are the three, I think, main ways enhancing your vocabulary will improve your life and improve the way you move in this world. Because a fourth point that kind of relates to all points in their connection and how it plays out into your life is that a rule my dad taught me early on, very early on, is you can only get what you want through other people. That this life, it's not an individual's game. This is something I think Americans don't understand. Or they understand it in a very menacing way, in a way that is to use people and discard them. The culture I grew up with is not like this. The culture that I grew up with, when sharing that sentiment that you can only get what you want through other people, it speaks to the importance of cohesion with people and that you must recognize that in life, it's a give and take. People help you out and you help other people out. But to do so, to have the ability to get what you want in life, obviously doing so ethically and with morals, you have to do that through other people. Using other people is not manipulative or wrong if you're not abusing them or doing something immoral. Like, for example, my friend uses me for emotional comfort. I use her for emotional comfort. We still love each other. We still respect each other. And there's so much that we care about each other. But like, that's part of it. You know what I mean? Or say you have a colleague. You could disagree with their character, right? And you could make that known, but you're just going to make your life difficult. Whereas if you knew how to express yourself in a way that's more diplomatic, you'd be able to present yourself in a way that's more cohesive and say then that coworker that you just disagree with their character, there might not be anything wrong with them, your personalities just don't mesh that well. But you communicated with them well and you maintained a healthy relationship with them. And so say later, they can put in a good word for who gets a promotion. And you're up for that promotion. You could work with them and ask them to help recommend you, and they would be willing to do so. because you were able to communicate in a way that maintained a healthy relationship, and that person was able to help you. Does that make sense? Do you see the point I'm making? I'll conclude this with three main takeaways. One is recognize the power of the right words at the right time. This will change your life. If you know how to speak at the right time with the right words and the right cadence, which right is subjective to the circumstance and environment, you will move through life with so much more ease and peace. The second thing is don't let yourself be dumbed down for the comfort of others. Just because what you do is different does not mean it's wrong or bad or incorrect. I think a lot of times when we act in a way that's different from the norm around us, it can make us feel that there is something wrong with us and we are the wrong one because the masses are not acting in the way that we act. Even if consciously we understand that's not how life works, it's a subconscious need to feel the part of a group. And when you feel you're doing something outside of that group, especially if people, for example, highlight that all the time, you want to conform. You want to feel like you're not sticking out. You want to be one of the people. Okay? But you are doing yourself a disservice by dumbing yourself down just to be like those around you. It's like when your parents said, if your friend jumps off a cliff, are you going to jump off a cliff? No, it's a stupid idea to jump off a cliff. You'll die. Okay, it's an equally stupid idea to dumb yourself down just for the comfort of other people who don't want to rise up. Because if you speak in the way that you speak around people that maybe are not at the same level yet, but they are willing to learn, they're going to love it. They're going to be inspired and they're going to want to grow and change and develop their vocabulary too. These are healthy people. If people are going to make fun of you, that's an insecurity thing. That's a them issue, not a you issue. I've never met a smart person who has a strong vocabulary ever make fun of someone who has a weak vocabulary. Ever. Because you cannot fault someone for not knowing what they don't know. This is such a coward's way out. When you see someone doesn't know something, help them out. Not in a condescending way, a lot of times not even in an obvious way. Sometimes when I can tell that someone is struggling for a word, I'll give them 30 seconds, 45 seconds. If they can't quite figure it out, I'll start making little suggestions. I just say the word out loud, that's it. I mean, it's not even a thing. I don't know how to explain it. It's so not a thing. It's just in the flow of the conversation. But then they'll be like, oh my God, yes, this word. Or oh wait, what does that one mean? And then it works out and same thing, I'll ask my friends sometimes because when you speak different languages, there are moments where it doesn't matter how good your vocabulary is in a language, you become dumbed down in moments. I don't know how to explain it. That part of your brain that knows the language just decides it doesn't want to hang out, and you forget. So for example, in English, my vocabulary is the strongest. In Arabic, not as strong. But sometimes when I don't speak Arabic for a while, my vocabulary is gone. But I don't take offense when people correct me in Arabic at all. And I always ask, oh wait, what does that word mean? Or what does that word mean? Because I want to learn. I don't see any harm in learning. There is no harm in learning. So I don't know why we make it such a big deal that if someone doesn't know something, they're ostracized. Or if they know too much of a thing. Anyways, people are ostracized for all different sorts of things. So don't dumb yourself down or change yourself for the comfort of other people, I guess is the main point. And the third thing is let your vocabulary evolve with you. You don't have to know 500 new words and how to use them in a sentence in the next month. Okay? Trying to do something like this in that way is so inorganic and will not help you because when it comes to language and words are like companions in a way. You have to learn to become familiar with them and how to use them. If you start overloading yourself with words, you don't give yourself a chance to utilize those words and use those tools and refine them and your use of them. And then you just forget all that information because you learn 500 words and their definition, like you're reading a textbook, and then never really learned the word. Words are more than just their definition. I think as someone who loves language and who loves writing and reading, like you'll see, I swear, ask any avid reader that's been reading for like 10 plus years consistently. Like last year I read 54 books, 54, something like that. I can check, but you're on my phone. Anyways, I can check. Something like 54 books, okay? If you're an avid reader, you read an average of like, I don't know, 45, 50 books a year. People have been, I'm not saying this is neither here nor there. I think, again, a lot of people who find comfort in reading, not always, but oftentimes, had a very isolated childhood. So you spend a lot of time with books, okay? Anyhow, what you come to realize is words almost have a sentience to them. There is an art to using words and using them in a sentence. And it's not even about technicalities and technical correctness. It's about expression and message and intent and perception. And I think if you try to learn too many words all at once, you don't really get to learn the full feel and flow of the word, how that word really fits into your vocabulary. So I would start like, again, I don't have a schedule for you because I think I come from a very different perspective as someone who's been reading for a very long time. But figure out a schedule for you. Maybe it's learning one new word a week at first, or maybe it's learning 2 new words a week, or maybe it's learning a sentence of new words and then like say like four new words and then cycling them throughout the week. Whatever it might be, figure out a way that's organic for you to expand your vocabulary. Because if you don't do it in that way, I'm telling you right now, you'll fail. Because you're going to treat this as an academic assignment, which oftentimes has a deadline. This is not an academic assignment. This is life. This is a project in life. Life projects, they don't have an end date. So you're in no rush. The only thing that matters is improving day by day. Okay? Improving day by day. But I promise you for every new word you learn, you will feel liberated. Liberated because you will feel that you've unlocked something. And I know this to be true because with my friends, I guess you'd say like the older sister of the group, maybe the mom, the older sister vibe. Like when my friends are going through challenges, oftentimes they'll come to me for counsel, okay? Just for me to be a listening ear. And many times over in such conversations, whether it be with my friends or oftentimes strangers also unload their baggage on me. So I've also had strangers speak to me. I get the comment regularly that I would say something in response to what they say, kind of summarizing what they've said to me. And they'll be like, that's exactly it. Oh my God, I've been feeling this way, but I have not been able to articulate it. And you just took the words right out of my mouth. And there's something liberating about that. And once they feel that they have those words, they're able to actually address the issue because there's something physical, like there's a thing that they can address versus a influx of feelings that feel all over the place and with no beginning or end. And that they can't even begin to describe to themselves, let alone to another person. Do you see what I mean? So it is true. I felt it in my life and I've seen it in my friends and I've seen it with strangers too. So as I said, let this be a lifelong practice for you. Let this be a commitment you make to yourself today to expand your vocabulary, not for the perception of others to seem smarter or cooler or what. Forget others. This is for yourself so that you can better communicate with the people you love and with the people around you, so that you can feel more cohesive with your environment, so that you can feel better about how you're representing yourself in this world. Because it's very important to feel good about how you're representing yourself in this world. Alrighty. I feel like that's everything I had to say about this topic. I mean, I'm sure there's so much more I have to say, but we don't want to be here for 3 hours, so I'm just gonna conclude that here. I've been thinking about a lot of things. I have some really great episode ideas coming up. I will say I know I've been a little bit inconsistent the past month or so. I was fasting. Okay, no excuses, I know. But fact of the matter is, I was fasting and I could not. I just could not. And now I'm fixing my schedule and I'm fixing a lot of things. And so I should be back on track, back on schedule starting next week. You'll still get 2 episodes this week. And then next week, I'll start on back on my original schedule, which is Monday and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Let me know if you like that schedule. I've also considered changing it to like Tuesday and Thursday, Sunday and Wednesday. I'm not sure yet. This is still all very new. So if you have any, thoughts, opinions, ideas, let me know. I'm so open to feedback. I think this is the longest outro I've ever made. So, good morning, good afternoon, good night, my friends. I will talk to you guys again soon. I hope this one was a good one for you. I know last episode, a lot of people felt really good about, which thank you so much for the positive feedback. Honestly, it made me feel some type of way, I'm not gonna lie, but very good. I really appreciate it. So thank you. And now I'm rambling. So goodbye. You guys have a good one. We'll talk again soon. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Alrighty. Bye. We'll talk again soon.